Sorry, Kesha, you're muted.
My apologies. Good morning, good afternoon from Nairobi, and welcome to the official launch of a new UNEP report titled An Eye on Methane, From Measurement to Momentum. The report takes stock of progress in accelerating methane reduction on a global scale. My name is Kesha Rukikairi, Head of News and Media for UNEP, and I will be moderating this event. So with us today to launch the report is the Executive Director of UNEP, Ms. Inge Andersen, who is joined by Ms. Ditte Juul Jorgensen, Director General for Energy at the European Commission, and Mr. Shinichi Kihara, Director General for International Policy and Carbon Neutrality at the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry for Japan. Now, before we start, I'll just run through a few quick housekeeping bits. We have 45 minutes for our program today, and we'll start with remarks from our panel, followed by a presentation of the findings of the report by Giulia Ferrini, who serves as the head of UNEP's International Methane Emissions Observatory. After which we will move to Q&A. Now, for journalists with questions, you'll see a Q&A option on your screen. Please submit your questions in writing in this box. And when you do this, please specify your name and the media outlet that you represent. Many of you will already have received materials under embargo, so please feel free to start putting your questions in the Q&A box right from the word go. So this event is being recorded. The recording will be available on request following the briefing. And now we will launch straight into the substance of this press conference with remarks from Ms. Andersen. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thank you for joining. At this point, of course, this is an absolutely critical issue because the world has the tools and the science to cut methane emissions, and it is starting to put them to use. But again, actions remain too slow to meet the climate goals. Methane, as we well know, is well over 80 times more powerful than CO2 in the short term and is the second largest driver of global warming. To keep the Paris Agreement within reach, therefore, we must cut methane emissions by at least 30% by 2030. Yet, atmospheric methane levels are still rising. So global pledges are already working hard, and we salute all of those who have signed up. We have 160 signatories to the Global Methane Pledge, and oil and gas companies representing half of the global production have pledged near zero methane emissions by 2030. But commitments are nothing without action. And one solution delivering result is the United Nations Environment Programme's UNEP's Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0, OGMP 2.0, the global gold standard for measuring and cutting methane in the oil and gas sector. The membership of OGMP 2.0 has more than doubled in 5 years, now covering 42% of global oil and gas production. The EU and other markets are already aligning their regulations with OGMP 2.0 standards. My colleague Giulia Ferrini will shortly share some key findings from the latest An Eye on Methane report, which looks at OGMP 2.0 progress and UNEP's broader methane work. We also know that data is a key to moving faster. And here MARS, UNEP's Methane Alert and Response System, MARS, tracks methane super emitters using data from 17 plus satellites from AI and global science networks. In 2025 alone, MARS issued 3,500 alerts of major emission events, but 90% of the alerts still go unanswered. Now, we are talking about tightening the screws in some cases so that we simply cannot ignore these. Let's talk about it. It's venting, flaring, and other escapes from existing infrastructure where we just need to tighten a few screws in some cases, and we can't ignore those rather easy wins. The reality is that we have, however, 25 verified cases of action taken. One such case is in Yemen, which had a climate impact of taking at least 360,000 cars off the road. The government and companies can do this, making sure that flaring, venting, and leaking is reduced or stopped, obviously. And so, whereas in Baku, I reported that only 2% of our MARS alerts were responded to, maybe I should say that at this point, we are at 10% of the MARS alerts responded to, which means that we are moving forward, although we still have some way to go. Beyond oil and gas, of course, methane from steel production remains a, can I call it a blind spot? Methane from metallurgical coal adds 25% to steel's climate footprint, which is around 1 gigaton of CO2, nearly the equivalent of all global aviation emissions. And yet it could be cut at just 1% of the steel price. This is one of the reasons why UNEP's IMEO, the International Methane Emissions Observatory, is expanding monitoring and launching a steel methane database, and we are urging immediate action by all producers. The message from this report and from our methane work is very, very clear. Let's just use the proven tools. Let's seize the economic benefits, because these releases could otherwise be used more effectively for production. Let's ensure that we decarbonize our economies, of course, and let's reap those very real climate rewards. Thank you very much. Over to you, Keisha.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anderson. Now we'll move straight to our next speaker, who is Ms. Dieter Jorgensen, Director General for Energy at the European Commission. And for media colleagues, please remember to pop any questions into the Q&A. Welcome, Ms. Jorgensen.
Thank you very much, Keisha, and thank you very much to UNEP and to Inga Andersen for hosting this and inviting us to give brief remarks from the European perspective. I would like to begin my remarks by honoring the legacy of Manfredi Caltagirone. He was a person of great integrity and a real giant of action in the field of methane emissions and climate. So he leaves big shoes to fill for all of us, and I think we can only hope to do so collectively and working together. And of course we have to. We are reaching the mid-course milestone of the Global Methane Pledge, and we can see, as Inga Andersen has also just outlined, the world is not yet on track to meet the targets. So we have to continue to support the vital work of this observatory, IMEO. We know that the partnership covers about 42% of global oil and gas production. It has set the global standard for tackling methane emissions in the energy sector. We know that the IMEO annual reports help empower governments, companies to take action through measuring and overview knowledge of the emissions that are there. We've also seen impact of initiatives like the Methane Alert and Response System and the Oil and Gas Methane Partnerships 2.0. In working together, each of us must of course also focus on our own actions in our constituents and areas. For the EU, we are co-conveners of the Global Methane Pledge. We have been a strong supporter of the International Methane Emission Observatory since the very launch, and we take our responsibility as the largest importer of fossil fuels seriously. In particular, our methane regulation provides a transparent framework, and now we are focusing on its implementation. We're doing that in very close dialogue with key stakeholders, with partner countries, and of course, with European Union member states. We need to make sure that there is certainty and predictability in the implementation. And of course, we want to make sure that the implementation of our regulation does not create obstacles or irritants to trade, and also that it does not stand in the way of security of supply. In working together, we must also broaden our base. IMEO is raising global ambition, cooperation, and we now have action through a large number of country endorsements, as UNEP just mentioned. We need more, and I'm therefore very pleased that Japan has recently joined the observatory, and pleased also the intention to host a ministerial meeting at COP30. So we're stepping up, we are growing in number, we are improving our data and knowledge, and we are strengthening each our efforts wherever we are. So for that, thank you very much for your time. Thank you again for inviting us, and I look forward to continuing the work together.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jorgensen. We'll just have our last speaker now, who is Mr. Shinichi Kihara, Japan's Director General for International Policy on Carbon Neutrality. Over to you, Mr. Kihara, before our presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and good evening from Tokyo. Thank you very much for giving me this amazing opportunity. I'm Shinichi Kihara from Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry of Japan. And congratulations to IMEO on the release of the IMEO Annual Report 2025. I would like to make short remarks on Japan's effort and our support on IMEO's activity. So LNG will continue to play a key role in meeting growing energy demand while keeping industrial competitiveness and aligning with emission reduction targets. And Japan plays an active role in managing methane emissions in the LNG value chain as one of the major importers in the world. And we have two major initiatives. One is encouraging voluntary action among industries, and two is contributing satellite data through Japan's state-of-the-art technologies. Initiative number one, through the Coalition of LNG Emission Abatement Towards Net Zero, or we call it CLEAN initiative, we encourage LNG producers and consumers to exchange information and share best practices for methane emission reduction rather than through regulatory measures. Under the CLEAN platform, in response to LNG buyers, LNG producers send data on methane intensity and emission reduction measures at project level, and the data will be collected and disclosed periodically through public entity JOGMEC. The CLEAN initiative is aligned with the Oil Gas Methane Partnership OGMP 2.0. The CLEAN initiative is voluntary, but very strong win-win partnership between LNG buyers and producers. It is a peer pressure mechanism for disclosure led by the buyers. Therefore, the buyers are willing to join as they will have access to cleaner LNG. The producer also have merit to join because they can showcase their methane emission reduction efforts and appeal to the lower emission as their strength. So clean coverage is expanding rapidly from just 2 companies in 2023. It now includes 27 LNG buyers and 17 producers and covers the world's 25% of the buyer side and 40% of producer side. We expect further growth in participation. And initiative number 2, Japan will provide satellite data collected through Japan's state-of-the-art technologies. At the LNG Producer Consumer Conference in 2025 in Tokyo this June, METI, JOGMEC, the National Institute for Environment Studies, the Ministry of Environment, and IMEO announced a joint statement on technical cooperation and data transparency for methane reduction from the LNG value chain. And based on this statement, Japan will provide data acquired by the newly launched satellite GOSAT-GW to IMEO. GOSAT-GW can observe the entire Earth in 3 days period and can measure greenhouse gas emission both with precision of 1 square kilometer mesh resolution and super wide range view. And this function will enable monitoring large-scale greenhouse gas emission sources. The provided data will be assimilated into the UNEP IMEO Methane Alert and Response System, the MARS, and is expected to be used for monitoring and countermeasures against methane emissions. Finally, I would like to announce that Government of Japan will host the IMEO ministerial meeting at COP30 on November 14, where the ministers of IMEO donors, representative of industries, and civil society will be discussing on further cooperation on methane emission reduction. As a pioneer of global LNG value chain with history of over 50 years, Japan will continue to be the top runner in reducing methane emission from the value chain. We expect IMEO to contribute to accelerating global action on methane emission reduction through collaboration with governments, industries, and civil society. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kihara. And I'd like to give our sincere thanks to Ms. Jorgensen and Mr. Kihara for joining us. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave now. Thank you kindly for your very comprehensive and interesting remarks. I would now like to hand the floor to Giulia Ferrini, who heads up our International Methane Emissions Observatory, for her presentation of the findings of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. Hello, I'm Giulia Ferrini, head of UNEP's International Methane Emissions Observatory. Thank you, Executive Director and esteemed panelists, for your remarks. Today, UNEP is proud to launch IMEO's 5th annual report, An Eye on Methane from Measurement to Momentum. This year's report is dedicated in loving memory to Manfredi Caltagirone, a colleague, a friend, and a visionary who conceived and led IMEO. 5 years into IMEO's mission, this report takes stock of remarkable progress in building and scaling the tools the world needs to cut methane. Our goal is very simple: to ensure that those with the power to act have the data and insights they need to drive rapid change. This report comes about a month before the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement, a milestone that reminds us of what global resolve can achieve. And it also marks the midpoint of a critical decade as we approach the Global Methane Pledge's 2030 target to curb emissions by 30%. And these two commitments are inseparable. Without action on methane, the vision set out in Paris will remain beyond reach. We have just over 50 months left to deliver on the pledge. The tools exist, the path is clear, it's time to act. If we move to the next slide, please. The fastest and most cost-effective methane reductions must come from the fossil fuel sector. UNEP's Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0 has become the global standard for methane emissions reporting and mitigation. It is shifting the industry from estimates to evidence. We've heard that 42% of global oil and gas production has now joined, 30% of production is or will soon be at gold standard reporting, our highest reporting level that demands real-world measurements. And what gets measured gets mitigated. Take one company member in Ukraine. Despite wartime constraints, they identified their biggest emission source, venting during manual discharge. They automated that process, cut emissions by half. That means more gas in the pipe, less in the atmosphere. So through OGMP, the tools the sector needs already exist. Now the rest of the industry must join to turn its pledges into action. Moving to Mars. IMEO also puts the power of a growing fleet of methane detecting satellites in the hands of governments and companies. Mars turns satellite detections into actionable alerts. Now, it is true that satellites can only see large emissions, and these are only a small share of the total, but yet they are a powerful tool to pinpoint and act on the biggest leaks. We've issued 3,500 alerts, catalyzed 25 mitigation cases in 10 countries. We've heard from the executive director on the Yemen example. We've also seen the first mitigation cases in Turkmenistan. So action is happening. Moving to the next slide, we see that engagement with Mars data is indeed growing. The response rate has jumped to 12% from last year's 1%. That's encouraging, not fast enough. Countries like Yemen, but also Argentina, Oman have achieved 100 or near 100% response rates that have translated into major emission cuts. Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan are making progress despite challenges with aging infrastructure, with detection equipment. And we're also seeing engagement growing in Libya, in Iraq, in Mexico. Now we need all the governments and the companies to step up. Moving to the next slide. IMEO science underpins everything we do. We produce peer-reviewed, independent data to pinpoint where methane reductions can go the furthest and fastest. This year, we've expanded our research into agriculture and waste, the frontier for large-scale methane mitigation. And moving to the next slide, we're also uncovering a hidden methane opportunity in the steel sector, as our executive director highlighted. The Steel Methane Program builds on the success of OGMP to help the steel value chain see, and more importantly, act on its methane problem. We will soon launch the first public database on mine-level emissions, integrating data from satellites, from scientific research. And this transparency will make the steel sector's methane challenge an opportunity impossible to ignore. Moving to the next slide, please. Across all our program, a common thread stands out. Data only drives change when people know how to act on it. To date, we've trained roughly 2,000 engineers, asset managers, regulators, policymakers from 40 countries on how to use IMEO data. Our Ion Methane data platform continues to grow and to respond to user needs, and we're very excited to unveil at COP next month our new features and sector coverage to help users go from data to action even faster. And concluding, none of this progress would be possible without our donors. Together, we're showing the data can deliver challenge change at speed and scale. And the challenge now is for the pace to match the promise. Let's make the next 50 months count for people and the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia, for that presentation, very clear and concise. Now we'll move to the Q&A. We already have several questions in the Q&A chat. Thank you very much, media colleagues. And we will start with a question from Angeli Mehta from the Ethical Core, which is similar to what's been asked by Ali Withers of Reuters and Matteo Civillini. The report says 90% of alerts go unanswered. Why is that, and what can be done to increase the response? And I'll give that to you, Ms. Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question. So just to put this in perspective, we started the pilot phase of Mars in 2023, and it was only in January 2024 that it went live. So these are early days, and would I like more response rate? Of course, and Julia will go into in a minute what response rate looks like, because that was another question, if I recall correctly. But this is on the increase because of the notifications that we are sending. And we very much want to see this, obviously, the uptake accelerate, which it has done, because after 1 year of operations, 2024, we saw a 2% response rate, and now we are at 10% 1 year later, or even not even, but 10 months later. Now, what we want to insist on is, of course, that this is a huge opportunity for mitigation, but also, frankly, it's good for the pocket, if you like, because these are resources that are simply vented, flared, or leaked that could otherwise be working. We are very much wanting for those to whom we notify to engage, which is why getting countries' attention to this matters, and matters so much. Because when countries, leaders have signed up and made commitment, that makes it more likely that they would want to respond to these notifications that are coming in. So the work is ongoing. We are 1 year in a pilot phase, 1 year in the regular work of this, of Mars, and your help in, frankly, boosting the media on the importance of this will also get greater global attention to this absolutely critical issue, because if we were to step in and reduce methane while we decarbonize our economies, it gives us a bit of a breather in terms of taking out those highly potent gases quickly. It is a doable and entirely doable thing that we simply should not allow to flare, leak, or vent into the atmosphere. Thank you very much, Keisha.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anderson. There's a quick follow-up from Ali. I think, Julia, if you can confirm if it's a 12% or 10% response rate that we're talking about.
I'm happy to report it has now increased to 12%. So we continue to make progress day after day.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So our next question is from Nick Nuttall at We Don't Have Time, who says, what outcome from COP30 would signal real action on methane cuts from either governments or sectors? I think one for you as well, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you so much. No, thank you very much to Nick Nuttall. And obviously, what we would like to see is some real commitments. There are countries that are aligning their own, or regions, as we heard, that are aligning their own emissions regs with that gold standard, and holding their domestic industry or their regional industry to account. We think that that's a very interesting way of going about it while we decarbonize. I keep having to say this because it is not a get out of jail card for free, but it is a critical, as we are still a hydrocarbon reliant global civilization, we have to deal with these methane emissions. So we would like to see more signups to the global pledge, more commitments of countries stepping up, more leaders leaning in, and yes, more national or regional oversight of this work to ensure that it is in alignment with that gold standard that we heard from Julia. That's our ask on this issue. We have many other asks for COP30, you will understand, but on this issue, this is what we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we have one from Aaron Clark from Bloomberg News. who says, although response rates to Mars alerts have increased over the past year, actual action by operators remains very limited. Since Mars began, only 25 verified emissions reductions have been recorded, representing less than 1% of all alerts. What do you think explains this lack of action? And could it be that many of the emissions detected by satellites are intentional or process related rather than fugitive leaks? I think, Julia, that's one for you.
Yes. So the number of notified sources means any source that was detected and notified in 2025. So while some sources may be emitting frequently, others may have been observed only once. And just to give an example, a large portion of the notified sources where we receive feedback are related to permitted short duration emission events for emergency, for safety reasons, programmed operations. This means that not all notified sources are actually actively emitting and therefore requiring mitigation. In some cases, mitigation is very easy. It's just about closing a valve or replacing a piece of equipment. In some other cases, this is more complex, but the point is that not all notifications will result in a mitigation. What is important, though, is that we receive a response, and a response, again, doesn't mean information on the mitigation, but information on the underlying causes of the emissions and any action planned to repair the emission. We do expect sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was saying we do hope that the response rate will increase. In case there are limited capacity, IMEO is providing training. In some cases, it does take time to go and investigate the source of emissions, but UNEP and its partners stand ready to provide this type of support. So we really hope that the response rate will increase.
Thank you very much. And I hope also, Gerard, from RFE, the answers before have covered your question. We have a final one here from Nick Nuttall, who says the IEA has said that no new oil and gas from 2022, but the president of Brazil has just given the go-ahead for drilling for oil and gas, methane, in the Amazonian water systems. What is the executive director's response, and has she reached out to Brazil on the eve of COP30?
Thank you very much for that question. No, indeed, I think the Secretary General of the United Nations has made it very clear and is totally aligned with the comments of the report and the analysis of IEA, i.e. that we should not extend oil and gas production, coal, at this time, but rather that we should invest into renewables and alternatives, well understanding that some countries have a heavy dependence on one of these sources and that it has to be a just transition. These are critical dimensions of that transition. The fact that there are still new oil and gas and coal exploration going on is, of course, regrettable. And whether it's in one location or another, the regret is the same because the CO2 emissions will be the same. And will affect us all. Therefore, the call for reducing emissions stand. At the same time, we are also hearing and seeing the call for finance. And the new quantified collective goal is a critical dimension of this. How will countries, and I speak to you from Nairobi, get the financing that they need to invest in renewable? And how will we ensure that they will not be locked in with infrastructure that is either gas, oil, or coal dependent, because we also understand that once a plant is built, it'll probably be in operation for 50 to 60 years. Therefore, getting the new quantified collective goal towards that goal, and that will be an important stock take that will be clearly a conversation in Belém will be important. The fact that Brazil has made this decision, that's a sovereign decision, of course. And from our side, we very much hope that we will not see further expansion of oil, gas, and coal production in any of the United Nations member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anderson. And I see that we have been very efficient and covered all 9 questions that have been asked. So I will wrap this up. Thank you so much to colleagues from the media. We remain available for Q&A and interview requests if you have them. We have one more here from Jan Kirchhoff, ARD Germany. How much methane is released by plumes in the oil and gas sector you detected, and can you estimate the amount? Julia, perhaps this is one for you.
Thank you. We certainly detect through satellites methane emissions primarily from the oil and gas sector, and although we will expand this to the waste and agriculture sector. In terms of quantifying the amount, what is important to keep in mind is that satellites can only see super emitters, so the largest emission, but the majority, 60 to 70% of emissions come from smaller diffuse sources, which is why having a program like OGMP is critical. So we can go back to the exact numbers, but certainly what is important to take home is that the oil and gas sector is the sector with the highest mitigation potential, and this is where we started focusing our effort as we expand to other sectors as well.
Thank you. And maybe we can have a final comment from you, Ms. Anderson.
And thank you very much, because one of the points that we want to emphasize is, of course, where you have large distributed system with an individual owner maybe having a few of the old-fashioned nodding donkeys or any such thing. And then when those wells run out or no longer are commercially viable, what do we do to ensure their closure? And oftentimes, if I'm a farmer and I have a few of these on my fields, maybe I do not have the resources to actually close. And so that is also a dimension where we are encouraging member states to look at those smaller but seeping emissions that can add up to quite a bundle, if I may say so, but which may not show up on the IMEO observations, but nevertheless have a substantial impact because of their multitude. So this is something that we are also very much encouraging for sign-ups when countries, as we heard from our two previous speakers, are moving in with national or regional standards for emissions. So I'll just add that to the last question as a response. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think that that's it. We have no open questions at the moment. Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Anderson, Julia, and colleagues who have left us, colleagues from the media, grateful for your time always. We